my tongue beneath itself, bleaching my language, clenching my jaw with shackled teeth, because the moment I open my mouth, uprising spring from my saliva, my dialogue is cruddy. Trample with the muddy boots of trade and migration, battling nations in my diaphragm, so the rhythm in my diction sounds like a war cry, and despite the white stuff down my windpipe, I talk black with nappy phonics, syllables that kink and twist, naughty expression that beads on my palate, so glow in this spit shine flow, Jerry curl jogging, bongo drums in my diction. This slang is semantic resistance, off with the head of the king's English. Can't you smell the riot on my breath? Char in my esophagus, my laugh is arsenic. And ain't enough opiates in this elementary education to hook me on phonics or gentrify the djembe out of my pronunciation. Love the taste of this cornbread accent. Sugar cane slang my tongue is. Motherland, mama of civilization, birth of every nation. Scat, boom, back, hi-hat, jazz, sax. There is music in my melanin, and I be talking hella black. With a neck roll to articulate my tone. Conversations get you high as my cheekbones, and lingo about lush as these hips done grown. Thick thighs and deep fried vernacular, hand motions and sound effects, hieroglyphics hidden in my messages. My breath is the building of the pyramids on repeat. I'm like a Negro spiritual sampled over a trap beat. There is a black anthem inside my belly, so I will always lift every voice and speak.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Black Effect Day 2. The Black Effect is a 5-day virtual event hosted by the National Plus Coalition and streamed through our sister company Plus TV and Media Productions. This event will be led by 15 of the most powerful speakers we could find to discuss 15 topics that affect melanated people on a national note. I'm Maria. I'm a tech-savvy ex-military kid who grew up in California living the female version of Forrest Gump's life and now resides in Colorado. I'm a lover of life, music fanatic, often caught reading, now a justice reform advocate or clemency pusher, lover of all people, critical thinker, sister, daughter, mother, grandma, who is the push behind the Free Kendall Martin movement. Let me go ahead. And yesterday, I just kind of want to discuss with you. Yesterday, we did have a day one, so you can definitely catch that on our on Plus TV Media Productions and YouTube. Our speakers at day one covered history and how we got here, reparations and nationalism, and separation versus integration. So let me go ahead and move right along, and we'll welcome the first speaker, which is going to be Jay Burton. Jay Burton, aka Jamu, founder of the Black Lives Matter prison chapter and vice president of No Comrades Left Behind, activist and author of the memoir, The Life and Times of an LA Blood. Welcome, Jay.
Marie.
How are you?
I'm blessed. Blessed to see you smiling. So I guess it's going to be a good day. Matter of fact, this is going to be a good day. So I'm here today to talk about the criminal just us system. Yes, I said just us, because that's basically what it's about, just us. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I was falsely convicted 33 years ago when I was 16 years old. I came to jail for a simple burglary, but was subsequently tried as a dope for a gang murder. A murder till this day I have maintained my innocence. Even when I went to a 2017 parole hearing, to a youth offender parole hearing, I maintained my innocence. And because of that, I was denied 7 more years just to get, chasing my own freedom. But, I'm not here to really seek out any sympathy votes or anything like that. I'm not a charity case. I do believe that I was put here for a reason. And I like to utilize that reason to try to help others now. But now, let me give you a little bit more insight about these youth offenders when it comes to being out here in California. I don't know how many states operate, but I know here in California, a spider sets up a web so it can catch its food, but it's often a lot of little holes in that web. Sometimes some things can get through that web, but most of the things that flies into that trap, they get trapped and they can't get out. This is the way the justice system is designed. It developed this web. It spins this web, and most of us that get caught in that web, we would never get out, or we'll never find a way out. But there's cracks in that web that some of us will slide out. But it's also cracks in that web for people who they need to be back out, who just got caught up and they need to slide them back out of there. So during my 33 years of fighting, trying to obtain my freedom, I could never find my way up out of them cracks. So, I came to jail. I started calling myself a political prisoner, although I'm not in here for something that I didn't do, but I call myself a political prisoner because of the politics that surrounds the whole justice system. I think almost all of us incarcerated, whether it's for something we did or we didn't do that didn't have no political overtone on it, was actually a political prisoner. See, we got to go back in history and see why this system is set up the way it's set up. During the abolishing of the slavery, the so-called abolishing of slavery, they had to enact something else to make it work for their own system the way they got it designed and set up. You see, they had the black codes, the Jim Crow. All this was designed after slavery because they needed somebody to finish doing work for basically free. So they created the 13th Amendment upon so-called abolishing slavery to let people go, but they did everything in their power to get them people trapped back into, like I say, that web that they spin. You could look at a person wrong and you could violate a law and you could be put in their system. And when you're put in their system, you basically gonna work for like sometimes 0 cents on a dollar. But now we talking about today in modern times, we working like a penny on a dollar now. See, on the streets, that would be illegal. Anything under minimum wage is considered slave wages. So you wonder where a lot of your companies out there on the streets, when they come into this, when they outsource. Some go to like China, places like that, but a lot of them places come into these prisons because they know slavery is still legal. And a lot of people don't know these 500 Fortune companies that heavily invested to these prisons. They do that for a reason. That's why all these draconian laws come into effect as well. Because these laws are designed to keep us, not just keep their foot on our neck, but to keep the corporations that invest heavily into the prison trade up and running, up and going, to profit only a small percentage of people. We can even think about the early 80s when the Reagan era hit. When crack cocaine got the filling from LA all the way, just started making its way all the way to the East Coast. That was like the early 80s, like around 82. Reagan came with the war on crack. The war on drugs. It wasn't until a few years after that crack cocaine started filling into these communities, and they start setting up their media to basically portray all these people in these inner cities. When they said the crack mother, first thing you saw was a black woman on there smoking crack. So people, and then they start saying, the drug dealers, the people who's destroying the communities, and the gang members who's destroying the communities, they show faces that look like me, so they can scare the hell out of everybody. So it's easy to start implementing these laws, so they could do what they had planned for several years, for decades. That was to fill up these prisons because, like I say, it goes back to them black codes and them Jim Crow laws, them leasing convicts, using convicts to lease them out, to make their money, to do their dirty work. People that built these railroad tracks and all these other things that most people weren't trying to do, and still till them picking cotton and all that other stuff, things that they was doing that most people didn't want to do no more because they was free. So they was like, okay, let's put it in these prisons. But we got to make sure that these prisons work for us, not against us. So I come back to me at 16 years old. I was arrested for a burglary and convicted for a murder that I had nothing to do with. Their whole thing was to keep me in prison for the rest of my life and try to strip me of everything they can get from me. Because it was about profit. It had nothing to do about, making the streets safer. How you gonna make the streets safer for somebody who didn't have nothing to do with a crime? You didn't make the streets safer. What you did, you just filled up your pockets for all those that invested to these prisons. I always feel for the family who lost their child. But the person who did it may be still walking the streets. I don't know. But imagine the ripple effect that it had, because not only that person lost a child, my mother lost a child as well. And it's a good time to talk about my mother. My mother was 16 when she had me back in 1972. 16 years later, I was in the system. She lost her child to the system. So 16 plus 16 is 32. I've been fighting this case for 33 years, but in my 32nd year, on the last month, December of last year, they finally reopened my case. Last year, December 1st. Now I'm in my 33rd year. And during all this time, I've always asked myself, what is it that I have to do while I'm sitting in these cages the way I'm sitting in these cages? I started buying cell phones. And you know what I started doing with these cell phones? I started using these cell phones because nobody can hear us behind these walls. So I started becoming a voice. I started sacrificing myself to where the police is running my cell multiple times, getting me for phones, but I'm not tripping because it's part of my sacrifice. I'm not tripping at all. People need to know what's going on behind these walls, but they need to know, they got to have the right people actually speaking for us. So the people on the street can feel what's going on and actually see what's going on. Because when the narrative is twisted through the media gonna always make people believe that we living good in these prisons for some of us, and some of us, we deserve to be in prison, rot and die. Imagine. They gave me 25 years of life for a murder. I was 16 years old. Basically, when you look at it, that's equivalent to a slow death. Talking about the 14th Amendment, which talking about they prohibit cruel. No, excuse me, the 8th Amendment, what they talking about, they prohibit cruel and unusual punishment. That's cruel and unusual punishment. Despite that, I didn't do it. And if I did do something like this, how is it that you could let a juvenile, 16 years old, sit in prison? I'm 50 years old now. There's no justification for that. So I was sentenced to a slow death. Many of us in these prisons are sentenced to slow death because of the way the system is designed. The system is designed this way to get everything they can get up out of us. But it goes back to, the responsibility in our communities. Our communities need to start raising hell on what's going on. But first, we got to get our communities the information. And those that be getting out of jail, they need to get back out there and explain to the people what's really going on. Because a lot of people get out of jail every day, but they don't go back to the community and let the people see what's really going on. They actually get back out to the community and do the same thing that got them caught up in the first time. That's why I do everything in my power to try to use my voice to empower the people, give them the information they need. Because I know at the end of the day, it's only going to be a small percentage of us that actually get out there and do what we're supposed to do and get the word out there and press hard for us. Brings me to one of my brothers, Rachelle Mcgee. This man been down 60 plus years out here in California. We've been doing everything in our power to make sure that we can release our elders. Why is it the man been in prison for 60 plus years here in California? He is what you call a political prisoner, literally. But this is how the system is designed. One of our brothers just died. He was one of the Black Panthers named Chip Fitzgerald. He He was a few cells down from me. Man been in prison 50-something years on an attempt, I believe it was allegedly attempted murder, whatever. But because when we, imprison people based on our political beliefs, America refused to admit that they have political prisoners. But when we don't have no voice behind these walls, we need to find ways to connect with the people out on the streets and let them know, look what's going on up in here. Don't look at everybody as a criminal, because your child can be the next child sitting up in here. Remember, I am in here for something I didn't do. So your child could be the next child that's stuck up in here. We need to figure out what we're going to do. We really do. And we as Black folks, we need to step up. I'm talking about our Black men. We really need to step up. Because we have dropped the ball. We have seriously dropped the ball when it comes to our Black men going back to our communities and building our communities. And this has nothing to do with no race issue. This has everything to do with our responsibility as a Black man and raising them Black boys when they come up. Not come up to, not raise them to hate the women. I don't care what race she is, to hate the women. Them the only people that stands on the front line when things is happening. It's our women. Women of all colors come to the front line to help us. To help people that look like me, but we can't even help ourselves. It's disturbing. It's a very disturbing thing. Back in 2006, I was validated as a Black guerrilla family. They done went from blood, and the more educated I became, they said, "Oh, he's a Black guerrilla family now." In 2006, they put me in isolation and segregated. I was segregated for 9 years because they said I am a guerrilla now, a guerrilla family member at that. It took from us from 2011, 2012, 2013 to hunger strike. I mean, literally starve ourselves for us to get from out of them traps. And they told us for years that, you guys are not back here for punitive reasons, meaning we're not punishing you. Well, what the hell is it? We sitting up under the ground, locked away. They said because for security concerns. Come on, is you serious? We had the hunger strike. We had over 30,000 prisoners in the state of California, probably in other states as well, that hunger strike just to try to get us out of them cages. About 3 people lost their life, gave their lives for this. We didn't eat for weeks. But this is the system that we in. See, people on the street need to know what's going on within this system. And I'm putting it out there. It took for us to do an agreement with the Mexicans and the whites and say, look, man, we got to come together. Because we as a Black voice, we're not strong enough in this prison system. But when they see that all of us come together, they see that we're strong. It took years for the Mexicans and the whites to say, you know what? We're going to do a peace agreement called End All Hostilities. And we're going to sign that. And we're going to get lawyers. We're going to get our families. We're going to get everybody involved in with this stuff that we got going on. So we did that. It took that, and it took a hunger strike. And it took a few lives to be perished or sacrificed for us to bring change. So if we can bring change that way, imagine what we can do on the streets. We need our people on the streets to find out what's going on within these prison constructs and then help us, because we can change this. No, I don't believe in reform. I can never believe in reform, because you can't reform something that was built on corruption. How can you reform anything that was built on a corrupt seed? What you got to do, you got to uproot that seed and do away with it and plant new seeds. I believe in abolishing. We got to abolish this whole system and start over. We got to bring everybody to the table and renew a whole new system after we abolish this system. There's no such thing as reform. You can't reform something on corruption. This has been my life. I've been freedom fighting for a long time. and I thank y'all for giving me the mic. My name is Jay Burton, aka Ajamu. If y'all want to learn anything else about me, you can find me on Instagram at Freedom for Jay Burton, number 4, Freedom number 4, Jay Burton. And I'll gladly assist y'all. Thank you.
Wow, you know, Jay, you have certainly have a place in my heart. I always look forward to having the opportunity to be able to even hear your heart. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for having the heart and the mindset to really want to speak to the people that are out here. I totally agree with you regarding there needs to be more activity out here. There definitely has to be a voice established for you guys that are in there. So, Jay, now that you've made this public declaration and you said that you guys were able to get your families together and actually start affecting the community on the outside, how would someone, because what I'm finding is people do want to help, they just don't know how. And when we start speaking in general or in these type of platforms, it really helps to educate people on little things that they can do in order to connect. So what would be some of those suggestions that you would say?
But first of all, I have to give my props to Ken for bringing this all together. Ken, Brooke, Maria, all you guys. I mean, I really have to give y'all props for that. But you know what? What we got to do, that's why I say I buy these phones. I sacrifice whatever just to buy me a phone because I use this as a voice because I have to speak for the voiceless because most times most people don't know what's going on behind these walls. You know, everybody has a perception, or you got guys that actually tell people on the streets what's going on, like on these prison phones, but that information is not really reciprocated the way it's supposed to be. So what we need to do, we got to start getting at the Jays and the Kents and everybody that's in these prisons and find out what is it that we can do from state to state, because all the states have different ways of dealing with certain things because of whatever political ramification that may comes when you addressing certain things. California, we have a more progressive state, so a lot of times people will come get at me about what y'all got going over there, so they can utilize them same steps. And so the thing, yeah, that's what we got to do. We got to get people behind us, but we got to also understand that a lot of us in these prisons are full of it. There are some of us that's really with it, and it's the ones, once you get a hold to one of the ones that's really with it, then the ones that you got to build with, because they gonna connect you with other people that's for the struggle and that's really with it, and these are the ones that's going to get things accomplished. Because I'm gonna do everything in my power to keep trying to get things accomplished. I refuse to submit.
Thank you very much, Jay, for your passion. We do appreciate you. God bless you and all of your efforts.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Salute. Peace.
Next we have, yes, sir. Next we have coming up Sauntario Sain. Sauntario is going to be speaking today about political prisoners. Sauntario is a graduate of the Grand Canyon University. He has a BS in counseling. And at this time, we do welcome Sauntario to our show.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sauntario. Sorry for the noise in the background. I'm just really getting off of work, but I'm going to do my part to the best that I can do. Well, I just want everybody to know, I'm actually a student of Grand Canyon University. I'm working on a degree in counseling with emphasis in chemical dependency, substance abuse, and addiction. Today, I'm going to be talking about political prisoners and how important political prisoners are to changing the dynamic on what's going on in the streets. A the first individual I would like to discuss is a brother that we all know by the name of Nelson Mandela, who spent actually 26 years in prison. Nelson Mandela was formidable in his ploy for equal rights within his country, and he fought dynamically to make sure that what he believed in was firmly stood upon. And it's crazy how they paint a picture of leaders, especially black leaders. And here's a man who spent a great portion of his life fighting for justice, equality, and freedom. And so many times we see this door reverberate down through the years, especially in dealing with the black and brown people. Another individual that I would like to discuss is Mathula Shakur. Mathula Shakur was a member of the Black Panther Party. He has spent a majority of his life behind the walls, being a voice for the black community, and also, he is also known as the father of Tupac Shakur. May he rest in peace. Afeni Shakur is his mother, and he's actually in ADX Florence, Colorado. In a prison system that's built underground, where they are locked down 23 hours a day. And it's crazy because, why would a person have to spend all day, every day in the cell without any communication, without being able to see a loved one? And, it's crazy how, they treat you when you're behind the wall. I myself have done time. I did 3 years, and it's a very unpleasant sight being treated as an animal, and the disrespect that you receive for actually committing a crime. So, political prisoners, even though they are in prison, doesn't mean that they're not human. Doesn't mean that they don't have feelings or emotions or have family members that love them, and they fight. They fight to the end, and it's just it's a terrible situation to be in, but at the same time, these men have commanding voices from behind the walls, and they stand firm on what they believe in, no matter how rough the situation may be. I'm also reminded of a group who did time in IDOC, the Illinois Department of Correction. They were known as the Pontiac 17. They fought for what they believed in. The prison systems during that time, their living conditions were horrible. They went on food strikes, and they also, did whatever it took to make sure that they were created equal. And these men were facing life sentences. One that I would like to bring up is a man that is highly respected and regarded. His name is Mr. Larry Hoover. Mr. Larry Hoover is serving multiple life sentences. Matter of fact, 6 life sentences. He spent 22 years in the Illinois Department of Correction, and 26 years in ADX Florence, Colorado. And you know, he's known to many as the founder of the Gangster Disciples. But what he did was he turned that dynamic into a positive, from a negative to a positive. Uh, he was inspired through a vision of his, and you know that dynamic alone lets me know that you know anybody can change. Here it is, a man who went to prison for a murder, and while in that system, he wrote a book called "From uh, Gangster Disciples: The Blueprint to Growth and Development." And in that book alone, he expresses a philosophy based on 6 universal principles, which is love, life, loyalty, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And in these principles, they are universal in essence. And in those teachings, he teaches that, you know, legitimacy is the correct way of living life. And how we live that life is based upon our every action, behavior, and attitude. And you know, here it is. He's still looked at as a monster after spending 48 years of his life in prison. But here is a man that has changed his life, who started out with a 3rd grade education and now has over 1,000 college credits under his belt. His lawyer, Justin Moore, has teamed up, and many others, Kanye West, Jay Prince, uh, Johnny Crusher Jackson, and many others, did a concert in his name in Los Angeles based on prison reformation, and how the system has you know destroyed people's lives. Uh, he's in ADX, and that's the worst prison, known as the worst prison in the United States of America, where you're locked down 23 to 24 hours a day without being able to uh, be or encounter another human being. And those living conditions are beyond beyond a person's uh, understanding. Like, people are up there literally losing their mind. But in spite of what he's going through, he has fought diligently, uh, and others have fought diligently for his freedom. Political prisoners have an opportunity to also save the youth, because the youth is our future, you know. And this dynamic can only be changed not only by those who are fighting behind those walls, but by those who are outside, join, that can join hand in hand, even though they can't physically touch these individuals, to fight. People are fighting. They're fighting for their lives, you know. And you know what can we do more to help them? You know, it's not about anything else but doing that which is right. You know, because I'm gonna tell you something, and I think about this all the time. You know, people are so quick to point the finger and act like they have done no wrong. But we've all messed up in our lives. We've all made bad mistakes. We've all did and said something that could be detrimental to another human being. But these political prisoners are fighting for their lives. Another individual that I would like to bring up is Jeff Forte. Jeff Forte started a organization called uh, the Black Keystone Nation, and has served most of his life behind the prison walls. He could have been out years ago. He is also in ADX Florence, fighting for his life, a believer in more science, and also changing the mindset of our youth. These individuals that I am talking to you about have programs set up for the youth, and you know they are no longer even a part of the organizations that they used to be a part of. You know, they're fighting, they're changing the mindsets, even being behind the walls. You know, and that's key. That's important. You know, and you know, what more can I say? What more can I do? I'm gonna continue to be a voice, no matter what the situation may be, or how bad it may become. You know, I am my brother's keeper. You know, no matter who they are, what race, color, or creed they might believe in. You know, I have a voice, and I'm going to use it to change the dynamic on how uh, those who have maybe been accused of something they have done wrong in the past, but have uh, made diligent efforts to be voices from behind the walls for their communities, for their people, for their culture. And that's the most important thing, you know, not, uh, you know, lifting up any negative aspects of life, uh, gang banging, none of those things, but being a voice, you know. And these are the things that I've come to learn, you know, growing up is educational, economical, political, and social development. Political development is key. We must understand the the roles of our legislative system. You know, we must understand how the government operates locally, state, and federally. These things are key. You know, we need to get out and understand the laws, how they play a critical role, and how uh, a lot of men and women's lives are determined once they are behind those walls. You know, don't nobody want to be treated out like an animal. These men have fought for their lives, but what will we do to help them? Will we fold, or will we stand strong and be a voice for them as they have dedicated their lives to being voices for others? This is key. And I just want to thank everyone, you know, for allowing me to be on this platform. Thank Brother Kent Burks and many others who have been influential in putting this program together. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to be a voice in my community, and also be a voice for the political prisoners. And my name is Sauntario. Um, you know, I hope that the light that I've shared can benefit and help others. Thank you all.
me. Here you go. Now you can hear me. So we're going to speak about, our next speaker is going to speak about the abolitionist movement. So I'd like to welcome Yusuf Hassan, slavery abolitionist, co-host of Abolitionists Today podcast, co-host of Abolition Today podcast, founding member of the Abolish Slavery National Network. Tongue twister for me. Welcome, Yusuf. Looking forward to hearing from you.
First and foremost, much love and respect to the previous speakers, Brother Jay Burton and Brother Sauntario Sain, and also to Brother Kent Abu Assad for putting this together, and the rest of Plus TV and Media Productions. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I just want to first, before we get into my talk, first, let me turn this camera off. I don't like looking at myself. When we think about abolition, or slavery, it's best for us to make sure that we're all on the same page and using the same definition of the terms. And so when we talk about abolition, we're talking about the act of officially ending or stopping something. So in the context of slavery, abolition is the act of officially ending and stopping slavery. Therefore, an abolitionist is a person who wants to stop or abolish slavery. So then you may ask, well, what is slavery? And so according to the Bellagio-Harvard guidelines on the legal parameters of slavery, it consists of 10 guidelines. And in the first guideline, it gives the legal definition of slavery as the status or condition of a person over whom any or all of the powers attaching to the right of ownership are exercised. And we want to look at the legislative history of slavery in the United States. And so we know on December 4th, 1865, the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution was enacted, and it states in Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Also, in Section 2, it says Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. But it didn't start there. The exception clause goes all the way back to the Vermont Constitution in 1777. They first came up with an exception clause. Then that followed in Article 6 of the 1787 Northwest Ordinance. Then there was Section 2 of the 1806 Ohio State Constitution, Section 34 of the 1843 Oregon State Constitution. Then came the Corwin Amendment, and that was of March 2nd, 1861. Section 32 of the 1861 Alabama State Constitution. In 1862, there was an act for the release of certain persons held to service or labor in the District of Columbia. Article 1, Section 17 of the 1864 Nevada State Constitution. Then came the 13th Amendment in 1865. So the 13th Amendment was sort of like the 10th iteration of an exception clause. And then many states after that, even in cases where they were not slave states, still adopted pro-slavery language into their constitutions. Currently, there are 22 states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, still having exception clauses in their constitutions. Now, the thing that links it all together, because a lot of times when people talk about slavery, they go from chattel slavery, then they jump to chain. They'll talk about chain gangs. They'll talking about the prison industrial complex, but they always jump over the convict lease system, because this is the thing that actually shows the intent behind what they were doing. And so we talk about the convict lease system. We're talking about a private-public partnership in which prisoners, this is under the definition, but when we say prisoners, we mean those who are in prison. They were leased to private companies for their labor. The convict lease system was used to undermine union organizing and perpetuate a form of slavery by imprisoning African Americans on false charges and forcing them to provide free labor. And this practice continues to this day. Every state has a prison industry in which goods are manufactured by those that are incarcerated on behalf of private companies. Prison stocks are sold on the New York Stock Exchange for Core Civic, and that's formerly known as Corrections Corporation of America, and the GEO Group. So if we want to look at the judicial history, so the first thing we'll ask, well, how did the courts deal with slavery when issues were brought before them? So remember, we mentioned that the 13th Amendment was enacted in 1865. So I searched through hundreds of cases trying to figure, just looking at the legal history. And the first case we came across was in 1871. There was a case called Ruffin versus Commonwealth, and that's cited as 68 VA 790. And so the court ruled, for the time being, during his term of service in the penitentiary, he is in a state of penal servitude to the state. He has, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights, except those which the law in its humanity accords to him. He is, for the time being, the slave of the state. He is civiliter mortis, meaning civilly dead, and his estate, if he has any, is administered like that of a dead man. Then in 1873, the court ruled that the main purpose of the 13th Amendment was to abolish African slavery and its incidents. The court in Slaughterhouse did not consider prison labor as an incident of slavery. The court went on further in 1883 in the civil rights cases, where, and this is where Section 2 of the 13th Amendment comes in play. It says, it's never been doubted, therefore, that the power vested in Congress to enforce the article by appropriate legislation includes the power to enact laws, direct or primary, operating upon these individuals, whether sanctioned by state legislation or not. Who is to decide what the appropriate legislation is? Congress of the United States, and it's for Congress to adopt such legislation as it may think proper, so that it be a means to accomplish the end of ending slavery. And decades of research, or decades of cases after that, followed these same three opinions, and boldly in 1970, in a case called Holt versus Sarver, cited as 309 Federal Supplement 362, it says, when Congress submitted the 13th Amendment to the United States, it must have been aware of generally accepted convict labor policies and practices, and the court is persuaded that the amendment's exception manifested a congressional intent not to reach such policies and practices. So this court was bold enough to say, look, when they adopted this 13th Amendment, if they wanted to operate other than what they were doing with convict leasing and warehousing bodies and all of the human right and civil right violations going on, then Congress would have done something about it when they enacted the 13th Amendment. They had the intent, and this is what the court said. So they made it abundantly clear that there was no other intention other than keeping slavery going. It just went from the private individual, and now it became institutionalized. So now states and the federal government could perpetuate slavery, but the common individual was not allowed to do that anymore. That was the only difference between the two. And so over the years, there have been several movements in an attempt to fully abolish slavery. We know that Frederick Douglass gave his famous speech in 1888, where he said, "I denounced the so-called Emancipation Proclamation as a stupendous fraud," because he saw what was going on throughout the country. He traveled. We're talking 25 years after or 23 years after the creation of the 13th Amendment. And therefore, no one could say, well, we don't know what they really intended. You didn't give it enough time. So 23 years is more than enough time to establish what they intended to do. And he saw it, and that's why he called it a fraud. And so now we are to the point where, well, what's going on now, and how are things going to change? And is it going to change anything? So on August 28th, 2020, we formed the Abolish Slavery National Network. This came on the heels of the state of Colorado abolishing slavery in 2018. They were able to remove the exception clause from their state constitution. And from there, a group formed, and we created the Abolish Slavery National Network. And since then, slavery has been abolished in Nebraska and Utah in 2020. Currently, there are 10 states with existing legislation in process or ballot initiatives to abolish slavery. That's Oregon, Tennessee, Vermont, Alabama, California, Ohio, New Jersey, Florida, Nevada, and Louisiana. Great news came out yesterday that ACA 3 passed the state house in California by a vote of 56-0. So it's going to move on to the state, and once it passes the state, then it'll become part of the ballot in California. We have 16 states that are organizing to get legislation for 2023. Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, South Carolina, North Carolina, Connecticut, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Kansas, Minnesota, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. And we want to thank Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon for Senate Joint Resolution 81, and Congresswoman Nakima Williams, the Georgia 5th District, for House Joint Resolution 104, which have been introduced in both houses of Congress to repeal and replace the 13th Amendment with the proposed 28th Amendment, which will remove all exceptions to abolishing slavery, and it's been deemed as the Abolition Amendment. And that was introduced on January 19th, 2021. And ironically, the Biden administration chose to announce right at the same time that the Abolition Amendment was being formulated, that they chose to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. So to perpetuate the lie that slavery has been abolished. We know that slavery hasn't been abolished. We just heard what Brother Jay told us of what's going on. We have tons of evidence. You know, we present this. As my bio stated, I'm the co-host of Abolition Today. It's a weekly online radio program where we speak about abolition of slavery, prison exploitation, prison for profit. We cover all of these topics each week. Okay, I see I'm running out of time. We cover these topics each week, and we also ran a program for 28 weeks. It was entitled, forgot what the name of the program was. I'm sorry. The program was called Live from the Plantation. That ran for 28 weeks, where we had numerous persons who were incarcerated called into the program. It was run by them, and they spoke of their issues, and we're going to be bringing that program back. The program will be titled Tales of the Plantation. Tune into Abolition Today Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern at abolitiontoday.org. Also go to abolishslavery.us if you want to join the movement. You can text "end the exception" as one phrase, no spaces, to 52886. And you can also visit their website, abolishslavery.us, for tons of information and tons of ways of getting involved. So I thank you all for your attention. I apologize for going over my time by a few minutes. And I just thank you, and I'm available for any questions. Okay, so I see a question here from Full Circle. Is there a current law in each state that allows the public to vote a bill amendment onto the ballot so that the public can decide if it becomes a law or not? And so this is what I was speaking of when I say that the process is a little different. What happens is you have to get a legislator on board, and the legislator will be the one who introduces the bill, and then once that bill is passed through both houses of Congress in the state, then that's when it goes on to the ballot, and the state gets to vote on whether or not it becomes law. So it's just the process, and thankfully we have state operations of the Abolish Slavery National Network. They do tremendous work there. They've provided me with most, all of the state information that I have. My involvement is more towards the legal aspects, looking at the legal history. But so according to Max Parthas, he happens to be my co-host on Abolition Today, and he's the co-chair of the state operations of Abolish Slavery National Network. He said there could be as many as 8 states on the ballot before the year is done. I'm not sure if there are any other questions.
I think Maria was attempting to say something, but I have all these notes. I'm like so excited about everything that you guys are talking about. It's really giving a lot of clarity. I know for me, coming just out of, well, my story is just Prentice Pons. Mr. Pons, when I found out about him being incarcerated in Oklahoma, serving life plus 25 years for a fist fight, I had just came out of corporate America. So, when I say, what do I need to do? It's simply because I joined the NAACP. I, tried to pursue, and I still work to pursue everything that I can to try to help, but more so try to help educate our people in the community, because what I see, and I think for me, one of the frustrating things is I know that our prisons are overran with so much injustice. And when people are getting out from being incarcerated, I believe Jay touched on that there's no movement, there's no activity, there's no unity. And we're already scattered, we're already segregated. And I believe it was Louis Farrakhan to start talking about the tribes, that we all have these separate segregated tribes. And if we understand that the unity is going to come from us combining the tribes together and looking at our similarities, coming with a common ground, using our voice to vote and get the playing field balanced, and then we can look at our differences and start working from there, because it makes no sense in this decade or in this generation with everything we have going on for us to have political prisoners. But it goes back to the following the money. So I do get that part. And thank you very much for your details. I'm going to be in touch and definitely listening to your show, sir.
Sure. Thank you. Just one thing I want to touch on based on what you had just stated. So there are movements going on, or I just say in my personal life. So currently I teach Python, or I'm a full stack development instructor at Columbia University, and for the Center of Justice Through Code, and we teach formerly incarcerated individuals how to code, and we put them on pathways to getting software engineering positions. I'm also a software engineer myself at Emergent Works. You can go to emergentworks.org. We also deal with formerly incarcerated and justice impacted individuals, and there are, many organizations popping up with it right now. This is something that we discussed with Van Jones down in Atlanta when we had Black Future Weekend. you know, they procured $100 million grant from Zuckerberg, and you know, that money is going towards, you know, the Black future, you know, and
Awesome.
and we have to incorporate technology, because we're so far behind when it comes to technology. So these are some of the things that we look forward to in the future. I see a couple of other questions that popped up. How would changing the language of the 13th Amendment change the dynamics of mass incarceration? Great question, Brother Kent.
I like to answer that.
Yeah, go ahead, Brother Jay.
Well, first and foremost, thank you. I had to go to somewhere. But look, the thing is this. First and foremost, there will be no profiteering.
There it is.
That's the key. Remember, mass incarceration, for those that don't know, it's about those who profit, those at the top who profit up off this. So if I'm not making no profit, why would I care about mass incarceration anymore? Remember, all this stuff, that's why, like in California, they got this thing like, say, for instance, I do a crime like a burglary. Let's say, for instance, the crime is like 5 years for the burglary. They're going to hit me with gang enhancements, gun enhancements. They're going to hit me with all kind of other extra stuff. And they're going to end up giving me, I'm going to end up after I leave the court with about 50 years. Literally, this is not no figure. It's a literal law on how they do it out here. The crime is for some that's kind of petty, but you're going to get hit with all these enhancements. So you're going to end up with about 50 years. So now I got 50 years of labor that I can get from you. But now, if I don't invest in these prisons, nobody ain't investing in these prisons no more, then why would I care about, you know, these enhancements no more? Because here it is, at the end of the day, the taxpayer is going to be paying all this, going to foot the whole bill now. There is nobody. So if I'm not benefiting, there's no need for me to get these draconian laws on the books and show some regurgitated stuff on these media to scare the heck out of you every day, making it look like everybody's about to come get you when it's really not like that. See, the thing is the media works with them. So the key thing is the media. We need y'all to, you know, exacerbate this to make it look like, you know, everybody's coming to kill them next. But it's really not like that, because there's people who profit off this stuff. But if I can't profit no more, why would I need the media to exacerbate, you know, the problem anymore?
So my brother.
So once you kill the 13th Amendment, once you get rid of slavery out of that 13th Amendment, then we can go back to the table. Remember, we can't really reform something that was built on corruption. We got to actually abolish that. And when it comes, people got to get out there, find out what Fortune 500 companies is investing heavily into these prisons, and start putting them on blast. Remember, on Wall Street, it won't say a Folsom State Prison on Wall Street. It's not going to say that. It's going to have a colorful name. You're not even going to know that you invested into prison slavery. Most people is not going to know that. So yes, once you do away with the 13th Amendment, things will start changing drastically, because there's nobody, you know, making no money up off this stuff anymore.
Thank you, brother. I was going to say that, adding the things that my brother Max just put in the chat. First and foremost, once you remove the exception clause from the Constitution, slavery will become illegal in all forms. Because right now it's legal. Like, it's legal as long as it's for punishment for a crime where the party's been duly convicted. And when we talk about duly convicted, and stop me if I start going off on a tangent, but some things are just necessary to be said. You know, we have Sixth Amendment violations going on in courtrooms every single day, where you have 95% of cases ending in plea bargains. You know, so therefore, you know, people aren't getting their right to a fair trial because of plea bargains.
Yeah.
You know, you have once you make it illegal, then the person gets their constitutional rights back. We heard the case earlier where it said, you know, you lose all your rights except the rights that the facility gives you, which is basically none. You know, you'll get those rights back. You'll get the right to vote back. You know, while people are incarcerated, they can't vote. You know, so we'll have about 6 to 10 million people able to vote again. That's what's going to happen. Also, people will be able to bring lawsuits, because historically, the court has always said, look, we can't do anything about it. Congress is the one that has to do something about slavery in the prisons. That's what Section 2 of the 13th Amendment says, and that's what the courts have said, that it's out of their jurisdiction. So therefore, Congress has to make that move, and this is why all of these this is why everything is being presented to all of the state legislatures, because they're the ones that have the power to do away with this. And it opens the door to lawsuits. Now that slavery has been abolished in Colorado, there are actually lawsuits pending in the Colorado courts for people bringing lawsuits for the badges and incidents of slavery that are being inflicted upon them by the Colorado prison system. So a lot is going to change by removing the exception clause. It's definitely not symbolic.
Let me say something. There's a thing called absolute immunity. There's a thing called basically immunity. Mm-hmm. Judges and DAs has immunity. Mm-hmm. Some of them they have basically absolute immunity. Mm-hmm. Imagine if we can also do away with that immunity clause, that we can sue the judges and the DAs. Believe me, when you can start suing the judges and DAs, a lot of stuff is going to change, because a lot of them DAs is not about to be working with the police in that context, because they know the police and the DAs, they sleep together and they do a whole bunch of foul stuff together. You can have a dead bang case, and you know what, the DA is still going to do something foul. They just can't help it. They can have a straight dead bang case. Next thing you know, you wonder why that person is coming back on appeals after appeals and what they call re-victimizing the victim's family. Mm-hmm. Because the DA can't help themselves. They got to do something foul every time. They always got to leave that door open, that we got to do something foul. We know we got him dead bang, but we still got to do something foul. But imagine if we could do it, if we can have it to where we got to get these new laws enacted that basically do away with slavery.
Slavery.
No, not slavery.
Immunity.
What did I just use?
Immunity.
Immunity. Excuse me, because I just got a brain fart. So immunity. Imagine if we can do away with the DA and the judge having qualified immunity or absolute immunity. If we could do away with that, them DAs and them judges, when they come in them courts, they're gonna come in them courts they're gonna uphold the law to the T, because they don't need this to come back on them. As we done seen time and time again, hundreds to maybe a few thousands of people has been exonerated from wrongful convictions. And a DA, how many DAs has actually sat there and said, you know what, that was really a wrongful conviction? I ain't seen one yet. It may be one, but 99% of the times they're not going to even ever admit that they handled a wrongful conviction case. Never, almost never. Like I say, maybe 1 out of 100, but that's not good. When it's only 1 out of 100, a DA would never admit that they did something wrong. So imagine if they didn't have this immunity that shields them from doing people wrong. A lot can change from that.
You're absolutely right, brother.
So we got to abolish the 13th Amendment. We got to abolish the immunity. That's two ways that we could do a lot of change. And we got to put these 500 corporations on blast that they invest heavily into these prisons. You start putting them on there, them are 3 solutions to our problems. Oh, let me go 4. Number 4 is we got to do away with indeterminate sentencing. Here it is. A man can sit in California with 5 years of life. 5 years to life. Meaning that he do his first 5 years, then he got to do the rest of his life. I told you we got to free Rachelle Mcgee. The man been down 60-something years. We got to free Jay Burton. Jay Burton been down 33 years. I was 16. Now I'm 50 years old. We got to do away with this stuff. And this is the way we get it started, by putting the information out there. So once you get the information, don't act like you don't know, because I'm telling you, it can be your child one day. And when you get the platform to know that you can use that platform for change, use that platform for change. Don't wait till it happened to you. and then all of a sudden you want to cry foul. You was in position to influence other people to let's change this stuff. That's what I have to say.
So the only thing I would say on the heels of that is that qualified immunity. If we or when we abolish slavery, it's also going to do away with the qualified immunity because they're protected by that exception clause. See, because when it says the person has been duly convicted, so that if they cop out or if they lose at trial, so they're covered. They took them through the judicial process, as they would say. But once we remove the exception clause, and we know that there are exceptions to immunity, you know, in case of negligence or fraud, you know, there are certain things that overcome immunity. But once you start talking about a crime against humanity, slavery is a crime against humanity, and there is no law to protect that except the exception clause. That's the only thing that protects the crime against humanity. So once we remove that protection, now we can start bringing more lawsuits against them. Everything else you said is absolutely correct, and I'm not correcting you. I'm just adding something to the end of what you said.
Basically, America is guilty for a crime against humanity, and we need to put America on the UN and on a trial before the UN, all the United Nations, because you are guilty.
Absolutely.
You've been holding juveniles in prison for a lifetime. That is cruel and unusual. And a person going to these persons go into these boardrooms and they tell these people after 20-something years, look, man, I didn't do it, and you deny them parole because they say they didn't do it after all these years, and you still, that's a crime against humanity.
In fact, there's been a recent worldwide tribunal that came together of legal experts, and they've found the United States guilty of genocide. And we know that they're in violation of Article 4 and Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I may even have that up somewhere in my notes. But if you get a chance, go read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's from the UN, and especially Article 4 and Article 5. And it makes it clear that the U.S. is guilty of crimes against humanity.
Yes. And for those that don't understand what we mean by the UN, America and a bunch of other countries have a treaty on how they supposed to treat their prisoners. America has violated that multiple times, time and time again. You know, here in California, they just actually done away with the death penalty. And you have people that's really upset about that. You know, I don't take up for people who've been those who are known child molesters. I can't speak for them, but I'm speaking for everybody else. Here it is. They done shown time and time again that there are people that's sitting on death row for crimes they did not commit. DNA evidence has proven this time and time again. America do not care about executing one person and the other 99 who happen to be guilty. Their whole thing is that we don't care about none of that. But you need to care because that might be you. That one innocent person might be you. So you need to care about this kind of stuff. But here it is. You got to play on people conscious of that may be you one day. So why is it that you don't care? I don't support the death. I don't support nothing America got to do with its judicial system because I know it's built around corruption and it's built around profit. So I would never support their system. But the thing is, we do have to have a solution to to our own problems in our community. So I'm gonna first address something because in our communities, let's talk about a movement that's just as powerful as the 60s civil rights movement, although it's because the 60s and the 50s, you know, that movement has brought it to where the people today, we got the hip hop community. We got to start holding our people responsible. Because that movement is corrupting our kids. Whether we believe it or not, that is a movement. That our music has affected the whole world, but we use it in the wrong way. But those in the power, they know what they're doing. They want the certain people to blow all the way up, but the person they're going to let blow up is the one that's going to educate your kid to believe in the unbelievable. And we got to stop that. We got to stop giving accolades to those that corrupt our kids' mind. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about taking our responsibility for us right now. Nobody else. It's our responsibility. This is why we're so messed up right now in our communities. We got a progressive DA out here in Los Angeles, California. This dude is so progressive that his own DAs, they went and filed lawsuits on him to get him up out of there. This dude said, I would no longer try anybody as adults no more. I would not do special circumstances for people to go to death row no more. These people cried foul. But you know what's sad? Is that when he did that, he stood on it for a minute. But people in our own community, those that look like me in my own community, they start going out there doing a bunch of crazy stuff. Now what you're doing, even though it may be about 5 acts, to do it, but the way the media is going to put it out there, it's going to look like it's 1,000. Yeah. And they're going to say everything that this progressive DA did, this is the most progressive DA in America's history. He don't even sleep in the bed with the police department. The police and everybody hate him. Since when a DA don't sleep with the police? Something is wrong with this picture. But our people, we didn't get behind this type of situation. We didn't get behind him. What we did the opposite and allowed them to tape a lot of stuff. What they do, they also said no bail. So people that go to jail for minor offenses, they don't have no bail, they get right out. So this is what they did. They start telling people that own these big stores, don't do nothing with these kids coming there and steal all kind of stuff. Don't do nothing. Let's let them do it so we can film it and put it on the news. They start letting this go on. So what they did, they created a cold narrative that since this progressive DA been in here, look what's been happening. Now we're going to do a recall because what he's doing, he's helping the oppressed people. We need to keep the oppressed people in their place. And this guy's trying not to, he's not working with us. So we're going to let them go rob, steal, and do everything. We're not going to do anything. But our people, even though it may be 5 and that actually did it, but the media is working with the pigs. So their whole thing is to show that it's 1,000, not 5. And remember, the media is very powerful. They know how to utilize their tools to plant a seed in people's head and let that tree grow overnight. And they're going to believe in the propaganda of that. But we as a people, we need to stop doing all this stuff so they won't have nothing to use on us. It's like I can go back further back into the 1992 riots, the LA riots behind the Rodney King thing. The Bloods and Crips came together. When they came together, they knew, the system knew it's time to knock them down. The Bloods and Crips is the oldest, one of the oldest, I'm going to use the word organization so I can keep it, organization in America's history. Over 50 years they've been around and they never, not once, tried to abolish the Bloods and Crips. Because the Bloods and Crips was never a threat to the government. Everybody else they considered a threat to the government that was waking people up, they was considered threat and they was either neutralized or killed all the way out. But the Bloods and Crips, they never tripped on them. But when they saw in 92 when the Bloods and Crips came together, you know what they did? They hurry up and did everything in their power to make sure that the Bloods and Crips start back beefing again. Because if the right people would have got behind them Bloods and Crips and start educating them and then enlightening them and showing them, look, this is what we're going to do with this. Not go and hurt people, but go and start being independent from our oppressor. Because we're not independent from our oppressor. We depend on our oppressor for everything. So now that I am coming into the light, I don't need you, oppressor. I realize that you're the one that's been oppressing me all this time. I don't need you no more. So the oppressor is going to do everything in their power to make sure that I need him again. And that's exactly what he did. He went back in there and he told them gangs. He started acting like he was one of the gang members. He sent somebody that looked just like me up in there because he's not going to send himself because he know that I'm going to work for him anyway. I've been working for him from day one. So what he do, he sends me back into that crowd and I disrupt everything. It's called agent provocateur. I was an agent and I went to go and provoke that again and blow it back up again. Because I don't need y'all united. Just like in these prisons, soon as they start releasing us from them last hunger strikes, when the blacks, the whites, the others, the Mexicans, we all came together and said, end all hostilities. Soon as they start letting us out, within a year, they killed one of the main dudes that was one of the political prisoners that was back in the black guerrilla families. They killed him. And he'd been down since the 60s. This was in 2014 or 15. He'd been down since the 60s, isolated for 30 years. Soon as they let him out, they hurry up and made sure that the Aryan brothers killed him. They killed him when the police set it in motion because they needed to break that agreement that was agreed upon from all the races. To when we get out here, we no longer trip on each other because we know the system is going to use that to keep us slammed down. So they can say, see, we told y'all we can't let these type of dudes up out here. But you know what we did as a collective? We said we're not going to let the system do us. We see what's going on. And since 2015, since they was forced to release us. Remember, we're sitting back there for non-disciplinary reasons, but some of us, I was back there 9 years. There was some of us back there for 20, 30, not 40 years, about 20 to 30 years in isolation. This is what America is not going to tell you about their prisoners. They're swapping down. They don't have no political prisoners. People talked about Sauntario Shakur, Coley. They talked about, but they, like I said, Rachelle Mcgee. These people have been down since the 60s and 70s. I came to jail in late 89. We got a campaign here in California called Free Our Elders. We're trying to free our elders. We need help. I'm doing everything I can. I started a program called Rich Mindset with the Rich Mindset TV show to enlighten people on how we need to get out this impoverished way of thinking and start having a rich mindset. Rich mindset doesn't necessarily mean money. It means that when I'm in an impoverished state of mind, I would do anything for $1, right? That means my conscious level is way low. But when I rise my conscience up, I'm not finna do anything for $1. And even when I'm in my impoverished way of thinking, I may come up on a good lick. I hit for 10,000, right? Guess what that 10,000 gonna do? Tomorrow, I'm not gonna have it anymore, and I'm gonna have to go out and repeat this cycle. So I'm trying to teach how we can start changing our mindset, how the way we think, how we see things. And this is my mission in life. Like I say, I'm behind these walls, but I am the voice. That's why I utilize these instruments that I have to get the word out there to help my people to uplift and push forward.
My brother was on a roll, and I wasn't trying to stop him either.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on the outside, so I can speak all the time. You know, you're on the inside, and that's why I'm like, let the brother go, because people don't get to hear him. Definitely hoping that you're going to be part of Tales from the Plantation once we bring that back onto the Abolition Today platform. I'm sure Brother Samuel Brown. He just came home after doing 24 years in California. He created the 10P program out in California. He's also the co-author of ACA 3, which is the Abolition Amendment in California to remove. So California abolished slavery, but they left involuntary servitude in their constitution.
Yes, exactly. That's still slavery.
It passed the House yesterday. It passed the California House 56-0. It's going down to the California Senate. We believe it's going to pass there, and God willing, to be on the 2022 ballot to finally end slavery, the slavery, but
So
then you
that
brothers still have a lot
that
of work.
doesn't end slavery.
Right.
Remember, that's just a
That's
playing of words. You done
but
played with the word from slavery to involuntary servitude.
sure.
There's no, these are the same words.
But
That's
I'm
why I say you got to abolish.
it's
There's a
the
such
first,
thing called abolish. That you got to dig that seed up out the ground and get rid of it.
but
There's
this
no such thing as involuntary servitude and slavery. Let me tell you something. Because involuntary servitude, right? Because if I don't work today, you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna write my ass up,
mm-hmm,
and then that's gonna give me more time in their system.
sure.
So
But
what's the difference? Write me up is no different than you whipping me with a whip, because I wouldn't go out there and slave for you.
Right.
So you got to, so you know.
But this is the first step. Once they can no longer legally enslave someone on paper, because you all have a lot of work that you're going to still have to do by bringing your lawsuits in California to stop that process. Right now, the California judicial system can't do anything about that. Like if you lost some good time because you refused to work, you can't do anything about it in the court system right now, because involuntary servitude is legal in California, as long as it's punishment for a crime. Once that's removed, now the court has to hear your case.
Yeah. They
can no longer just reject it.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be a lot of hurdles to overcome. But the first step is to remove the legality from the state constitutions, from the U.S. Constitution. That's going to force the court to now have jurisdiction over these cases that come before it. Right now, they can't, because Section 2 of the Constitution prevents them from doing so.
That's why the key to that, the solution to that, is find out who invests into these prisons.
Right.
Once you find out who invests who has interest in these prisons, once you find that out and you start putting their butts on blast, see, they start losing money. Key thing about businesses, you never want to lose money. And when you start getting put out there on blast, you're gonna pull out. Once you pull out and all these people pull out, there's no need for involuntary servitude, slavery, none of that. Because you pull out, because you've been put on blast. Don't nobody want to connect themselves to slavery.
Well, nobody. We're dealing with sick devils. So they found a way to where. So what they start doing now is they start creating these SPACs. A SPAC is a special purpose acquisition company. And so now, instead of them doing direct business with prisons or any other industry, they create another company and do it through there. Case in point, how many people have heard of strategic packing solutions? Nobody. But what does strategic packing solutions do? They pack coffee for Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. So now Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks can say, "Oh, we don't deal with prisons anymore." But they really do, because they do it through this special purpose acquisition company. So they know how to hide this, just like they use the exception clause to be sneaky about continuing slavery. They've done the same thing with these companies. So you have a lot of companies saying, "Oh, we don't deal with that anymore," but they really are. They're doing it through special companies. You can go to any of the streaming platforms, look for Abolition Today. In our first season, we had an episode called The Money Machine, and we really broke down how this shell game of this money is really played, talking about, Securus, who owns Global Tel Link, and we got JPay, and we have Aramark, who does the food, and Keefe, who does the commissary. Like, we really broke down all these companies of how they're making the money and how they're represented on the stock market. Because many of the companies that people have in their 401k programs are actually involved in the prison slave trade, right? Yeah. And they don't know it, because they look for the big ones. So they'll look for Civic, they'll look for GEO Group, but they won't think about Vanguard. Barclays just pulled out. but there are so many companies that are involved in the stock market where their main breadwinner is the prison industry.
Yeah. Now let me say something. What if I'm one of them, hard nosed law enforcement type persons? Why would I care? So give me a reason to make me care about that.
I'm sorry.
About what we got. Give me a reason. Say, for instance, I'm one of them law enforcers and I come from a family of law enforcers and all this sort of stuff. We got to make this a broad issue, not a narrow issue. See, when it's a narrow issue, most people feel like, okay, that don't affect me. I don't give a damn. How do we make this appeal to a mass of people, not just to a broader people? What I mean by the narrow people are those who happen to have people who's incarcerated. How do we appeal to those who don't have people incarcerated because they wouldn't give a care about what you're talking about? How do we get the message out there to show that you should care?
Well, the first thing is you have to clearly define slavery. And once you do that, now people have to choose a side. You're either for or against slavery.
Yeah.
See, when you start using all these other terms to define slavery, and it gets muddy in the water.
Yeah.
So they start talking about debt, or they start talking, just anything, or they start calling it mass incarceration. See, mass incarceration gives it the impression that incarceration is about numbers and it's evenly spread across all races. And we know that that's not true. We have we have run the numbers, and if mass incarceration fully represented the U.S. population, there would be 5 million more white people in prison if that was the case, to even out the numbers. But we look at state after state after state where you have blacks making up 1 or 2% of the state population, but 40% of the prison population. So we know it's targeted towards a group of people, and that goes all the way back to the black codes, the convict leasing and the black codes. So when you start pointing out numbers, and especially when it comes to money, many people started becoming anti-police brutality when you start showing them where their tax dollars are going. When you pay your tax, when you pay the taxes, your property taxes, and you start seeing the money's not going to DPW to fix potholes in your street, but it's going to pay off lawsuits for cops murdering people, then that's when people start caring.
Yes.
Like you said earlier, you said, and Brother Sain said the same thing. When it directly affects people, that's when they start caring. So we put them in a position where they see this directly affects.
Yeah.
Some obscure thing, oh, that's just black people. They're inherently criminal. So it's about education. That the education curve is just so high. We just have to educate people. And we know that there's a large fraction of the U.S. population that's still not going to care. But we don't care about them. They're just not going to care because they benefit. Cui bono. That was the topic that we used that day. Cui bono. Who benefits? So the ones who benefit don't care.
Yeah.
But people see the clear numbers, and you put them in a position where they have to make a choice.
Yeah.
See, they can hide as long as they don't have to make a choice.
Yeah. But you know what? My mentor, Kareem R. Ellis, he always tell us that we have to always leave a nugget so people can get a clear understanding what you're trying to, how it affects people. How when you speak, you want to show how it affects people and how you can make something better. And you hit a lot of things. And one of the things that I know is that when you start playing with people pocket change, they're willing to stop and listen, like what's going on. When people start realizing that you keep people like we got a thing out here called Free Our Elders, that a campaign that we got going on. You've been holding elders in these prisons for 30, 40, 50 years. For what? Don't you know that the taxpayers paid for the, not just the, you stand here for whatever amount of money they give you per year just for a regular prisoner, but when the older you get, you got these medical expenses and all these other things that tax on there. So you paying all this extra money out of your taxes to keep people who, I'm talking about the ones that actually did stuff, people who have that's it's not going to reoffend at all. I mean, they got literally elders in here. They got people in wheelchairs running around here, and it's sad to see what's going on. But this is the information that we got to get out there. We got to let people know, look, these people are playing with your tax dollars. This is about a bunch of rich folks that's sitting up there in the higher up, and they trying to and they making money off this. This is about mass incarceration equals a fat check, but not for you, but for those who invest into these prisons. And that's the information that you got to get out to people. You got to show them that you don't benefit from this. This is, I mean, a small percentage of this is about, curbing crime. But at the same time, the majority of stuff has nothing to do about curbing crime.
Right.
This shit has everything to do with people's pocketbooks, and it's not your pocketbook. So that's the way I can end it at. I have to go and take care of some other stuff, and I really
I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to speak today. Yeah. And I want to thank the audience for watching day 2 of the Black Effect. We'll actually be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and tomorrow we'll be talking about Black businesses, gangsterism versus activism, as well as stereotypes. Do you guys want to, before we go ahead and give out your information one more time? So if people want to reach out to you, they can.
Well, yes, you can.
Go ahead first, and then I give you the final word, Brother Jay.
Okay, thank you, brother.
All right, so you can reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Yusuf Hassan. Also, I just encourage everyone to go to abolishslavery.us. To join the Abolish Slavery National Network. Also go to abolitiontoday.org. You can also go to all of the streaming platforms, Spotify and Stitcher and Apple Podcasts. Find Abolition Today. We have tons of episodes. We air live every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Everyone tune in. We invite you to do that. Give us the feedback. But most importantly, join the movement at abolishslavery.us. And also tune in soon. We're going to start promoting it once we have everything in order for Tales from the Plantation. You'll be able to hear from brothers like Jay here. Brother,
I'm there.
You got to open up the mic so we can hear from the people on the inside. And just so you all know, Abolition Today is it was actually started by Jailhouse Lawyers Speak. They came to Max and told him to come back on the air, and Max chose me as his co-host, and we've been doing it since March 15th, 2020. So we have a ton of information there. And like I said, we ran for 28 weeks with Live from the Plantation. Those on the inside, they got retaliated against for coming on the air, but it lasted 28 weeks, and we're going to start it up again because the voices from the inside need to be heard. Thank you all for your attention this evening. Max just reminded me of a special guest this Sunday. The historian is Professor Manisha Sinha. She's the author of a book entitled The Slave's Cause and a ton of other publications, so tune in for that. Thank you all. God bless you all. Brother Jay, I'm gonna reach out to you. Stay safe there, brother, in solidarity, man.
I appreciate you, brother. I like to end this with my YouTube station that I just started called Rich Mindset TV. You might find other Rich Mindsets on there, but it's Rich Mindset TV. You will see pieces of my documentary that we done put together. Basically, it's a promo of the documentary that we actually working on, but it's some good material on there. You also can follow me. As a matter of fact, go subscribe to that YouTube station. Then I got my Instagram is what Freedom for J Burton. Freedom #4 J Burton. Then my Twitter is Freedom J No, Freedom for JBURTON. And then I also got my book that you can grab on Amazon called Life and Times of an LA Blood by Jay Burton. You can check that out. I also got some NFTs that's about to pop up. Y'all can just follow me on Twitter and Instagram. You can find out what we got going on with that with them NFTs. It's gonna be a big thing. We got some big projects in the making, and I appreciate y'all. Appreciate you, Maria, everybody that's been involved in this project, the Plus family. You know, it's all good. And thank you.
Thank you guys for coming on tonight. Also, please like, follow, and subscribe to Plus TV and Media. If you'd like to reach us, you can reach us at 888-806-6748. You can reach our website at www.plustvproductions.com. And you can email us at info@plustvproductions.com. You guys have a wonderful night. It's been great.
Thank you. Peace.
Thank you. Peace.